When looking at how to manage emotional experiences, this kind of leads into important ideas. So we're going to look at emotional intelligence, managing emotions, preventing emotions, not necessarily preventing them, but how are we going to work with them, and then reappraising the emotion. So when we look at emotional intelligence, this is kind of what you might think about when you're managing emotions. Really, a person that has good emotional intelligence has accurate interpretation of what the emotions are that they're experiencing. And there's a certain amount of skill in understanding your own emotions, understanding somebody else's emotions. So having empathy. So I think the difference between empathy and sympathy is oftentimes when we experience sympathy, we're feeling sorry for someone else. But when we feel empathy, we're putting ourselves in the other person's shoes. So certainly differences in those two. And our aptitude for managing our emotions, as well as harnessing emotional states. So one of the things I want to say about emotional intelligence, Daniel Goleman was someone that wrote a book about this. He's kind of on the forefront of this, defining what this means, because we've often had a lot of appreciation for someone's academic or mathematical ability versus someone's ability to understand someone else's emotions or social intelligence. There's also visual intelligence, so the ability to, we could call it spatial, maybe spatial intelligence, where you understand how things are put in space. So that might be an artist. An artist is going to be really good at understanding how elements go together in space. So there's lots of different types of intelligence. A person's kinesthetic ability, when we look at athletes as having a great deal of that, and there isn't really, I don't think there's been research that says that there's one over another, or that if you have emotional intelligence, you don't have academic intelligence. I think they're not necessarily correlated, at least not in a negative way. I think they found it correlated in the opposite direction, where if somebody has a high academic intelligence, they often will have a high emotional intelligence as well, but not necessarily. And I think there's value in looking at the different types of intelligence and acknowledging, if you're really good at that, then that's a really neat skill. It's a good skill to have, and acknowledging that if somebody else is good at it, also that's something that's valuable. There is a quiz on page 103 that you might take just to see how you do with your own emotional intelligence. So managing emotions after they occur. So one of the things that people oftentimes do is they'll suppress it. So they might have inhibiting thoughts about the arousal, because a lot of times people will go a little overboard. Your textbook shows a picture of the Hulk. When I was younger, there was, the TV show, The Incredible Hulk, and "Don't make me mad," he used to say, and then he would turn into the Hulk. So really the idea of trying to work on those thoughts before they get too extreme, you kind of want to, maybe keep them within a certain range, unless, I don't know. I mean, I think if it's a great deal of joy, I think that's awesome. I think anything, and then it's in its extreme, maybe you might need to take into consideration, but yeah. And there are certain elements that create this arousal. So something generally precipitated or caused you to have that emotion. So how are we going to stop that? One of the things I do is I oftentimes work with people in figuring out what it is that's their trigger. What is it that is the thing that causes that next step to happen? So if you have a lot of extreme anger, if you know that there's certain things that are going to cause it, then we try to stop it before it actually gets too far. So if you know that being around a certain person causes you to feel angry, then if you're going to be around that person, you need to catch yourself before you let yourself get too upset. And then there's also displays of behavior. So rage or all those kinds of things can cause someone to experience behavior that's oriented around that specific emotion. Venting allows you it to dominate your thoughts and express it. So sometimes you'll see things like fanning the flame and having this explosive expression of anger, or I think anger is oftentimes associated with a negative emotion. I don't think it's in and of itself a negative emotion. I just don't think you want to hang out there. It's just, it is what it is. And maybe you feel anger, but just don't stay there for a long period of time. Just feel it and move on. There's also acceptance. Like, isn't that interesting? I say that a lot to my clients. When you have an emotion or something, rather than having a great interpretation of it, go, isn't that interesting that I'm having this emotion? Isn't that interesting that I'm feeling angry right now? And not necessarily judging it as being good or bad. It's just, it is what it is. And just recognizing it as being interesting. So I think about these things when I'm working with people, and the idea of preventing emotions before they occur. So again, there's different techniques for doing this. And I think about this maybe when I'm working with someone and changing their behavior through hypnotherapy. Let's just say I'm working with someone that's a smoker. If they want to stop smoking, then maybe what they're going to do is they're going to keep themselves away from situations where they have wanted to smoke in the past. If they oftentimes would drink alcohol and smoking goes along with it, then we need to discourage the alcohol drinking until we get a little bit further down the path so that they won't trigger that desire to want to smoke. Another one might be encounter structuring. So again, avoiding and staying away from situations that could cause cause unwanted desires around a specific area. So if there's a person or situation that causes you to feel angry, stay away from it. Find another place to be. Another one might be to focus your attention someplace else. So where could I focus my attention that's not going to cause that emotion to be activated? The last one we call deactivation, and you no longer feel the emotion. One of the things that we do, and it actually mentions it in the book, but it's a procedure that we oftentimes do called systematic desensitization. What we do in this situation is we will pair relaxation, so have the person experience relaxation and imagine it in their mind, feeling angry or frustrated or wanting to smoke, but instead feeling relaxed. And then you do it over and over again. So they might feel the emotion, they might feel the desire for a cigarette, but I have them relax so the desire goes away. Same thing with anger, person might start to feel angry, have them relax, and the desire goes away. They just don't care, pretty much. So reappraisal is basically changing the way that you think. So that you're gonna kind of keep your attention on thinking about the positive aspects of the situation, and then also thinking about the consequences. What are the short-term consequences? What are the long-term consequences? And looking at other ways of maybe working with the emotions rather than allowing them to take over. So just another way of managing or dealing with the emotion. There you go. Thank you.